Hello, everyone. Welcome in here to the KTVU Fox Local Stream. I'm Alex Savage. You've been watching our election results here tonight, and we are getting our first look at results coming in from California's primary election. So we want to get you updated here. Bay Area voters weighing in, of course, on the presidential race as well as other important races. And here is a look. President Biden has won the Democratic primary here in the state of California, as you see from these results that have just come in to our newsroom. Now, let's switch it over to the Republican side and show you that former President Trump has won the Republican primary here in the state of California with 75% support to 21% support for Nikki Haley. Now, we are just getting results at this point for the race for the U.S. Senate, and we can tell you here tonight that this is the race to fill the seat left vacant by the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. And we do understand that the Democrat Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey will be advancing to the November general election here. This obviously a very closely watched race in California. And obviously, you can see here the two other Democrats, Katie Porter with 15% support and Barbara Lee, the East Bay Congresswoman, with 7% support in that race. But again, Democrat Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey will be advancing to the November general election in the race for U.S. Senate here in California. Now, we'll switch things over and show you the race to replace Congresswoman Barbara Lee's congressional seat, which is up for grabs now as she ran for the Senate. And here's a look at the results here in this race. Latifah Simon, Democrat, with 42% support here in the race for District 12, the District 12 congressional seat. We can also switch to another congressional race that we have been watching here, and that is the seat of Representative Anna Eshoo in Silicon Valley. That seat up for grabs now as Eshoo retires. And these are the early results that are just coming in right now. And obviously, as you can see here, this is a very tight race. You have a number of well-known contenders here involved in this race. Former San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo has 23% support. He is in the lead at this point. Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian with 19% support. And State Assemblyman Evan Lowe with 16% support, and Peter Otake coming in with 12% support. So obviously this one not decided here with about half or so of the ballots coming in at this point. So we're going to continue to follow this race here and see if a winner is declared here as we move throughout the night. Now, there is one statewide ballot initiative that voters are deciding here in this primary election. That is Proposition 1. This is the measure that would allow the state to borrow $6.4 billion to use to build mental health facilities and substance abuse treatment facilities. And you can see the numbers here on the screen. Proposition 1 has 51% support, but 49% of voters are rejecting this proposition. So obviously this is far too early to call on whether or not Proposition 1 is going to pass here. Just 18% of the precincts reporting here on Proposition 1. Again, the headlines here that we are following tonight. President Biden has won the primary here in California, the Democratic primary, and former President Trump has won the Republican primary here in this state. And the other big headline here is in the race for U.S. Senate. The Democrat Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey will advance to the general election coming up in November in that race to replace the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. We are continuing to monitor all of these results in those congressional races here in the Bay Area. And of course, Proposition 1 and a lot of other measures and races that are happening all over the Bay Area. We're going to have more election coverage coming up here on Fox Local tonight. We'll have another update for you at around 9 o'clock or so. We'll also be joined at that time by our political analyst, Brian Sobel, and we'll kind of break down some of these races and what we're seeing with the results. And we'll take a look at some other local elections as well. We'll get you back now to our coverage of election results here on this Super Tuesday, and we'll have another update for you coming up shortly. Hello again, everyone. Welcome in here to the KTVU Fox Local Stream. I'm Alex Savage, and of course it is Super Tuesday, and we have results that are coming in now from all across California and across the country, for that matter, all the states, the 15 states and the one territory that took part in nominating contest today. And of course that includes California, and we are getting results here in California after the polls closed just an hour or so ago. And of course the race for president in the Democratic primary here. No surprise, President Biden cruising to victory here with 88% support among voters. When we flip it over to the Republican race, you can see former President Trump winning easily here over Nikki Haley. Mr. Trump with 75% support in this race, but of course, no surprise here in the primary contest in California. We'll move over here, and this is one of the most widely watched and hotly contested races here in California. That is the Senate race to fill the seat left vacant by the late Senator Dianne Feinstein from San Francisco. And you can see here how this is shaping up. Democrat Adam Schiff is projected to move on to the general election in November. And you can see right behind him is the Republican Steve Garvey with 29% support. And there are a number of outlets reporting that it will be, in fact, Schiff and Garvey moving on to the November general election here in the race for U.S. Senate in California. Now, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, she is, of course, one of the contenders there, was one of the contenders in that Senate race, and that left open her congressional seat in the East Bay. And here's a look at the results of that race in District 12. And Latifah Simon, who got the endorsement of Barbara Lee, has 42% support tonight among voters, and she seems to be moving away with this race here right now. Not much competition from the other folks who are in this race. Now, another longtime Congresswoman leaving her post, and that is Representative Anna Eshoo. And this is a seat, a hotly contested seat in Silicon Valley that is up for grabs. That doesn't usually happen here. So a lot of big names jumped into this race, in particular former San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo. You can see him in the lead so far with about half of the ballots in at this point. Sam Liccardo with 23% support, and just behind him, Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian, along with Assembly Member Evan Lowe here. And of course, this race still too close to call tonight. All right, for more analysis on some of the races and what's been playing out so far, here as we get the results in, we're joined here in studio by Brian Sobel. Brian, it's good to have you here. Let me circle back, if I can, to this Senate race here. And so it looks as though Adam Schiff's strategy that we have talked a lot about to sort of box out the two other Democrats and lift up the Republican Steve Garvey, so he believes at least that he'll have maybe an easier path in the general. Seems as though that has worked out for him.
You know, when you go out and you design your campaign and you hit all your marks, it's a great night, and he has hit all his marks tonight. His campaign team is thrilled. Tomorrow they will call Barbara Lee's campaign and Katie Porter's campaign and say, we're very sorry because you would have been, you know, a great contender and a good opponent. But from the very beginning, it was real clear what was going on. And we saw it with all the media buys, the commercials that were done, that at the end of the day, Adam Schiff and his campaign did a great job of designing a strategy to see the Republican who will have very little statewide support in California relative to Schiff. Yeah,
let me ask you one thing on that note. Why do you think Adam Schiff was so concerned about facing off against, let's say, a Katie Porter?
Well, I think Katie Porter could have been a formidable candidate if it were one-on-one.
Yeah.
But, you know, he devised his campaign devised very early on that we need to somehow knock them out, and I think there's going to be some bitterness over this, to be quite honest, because I think a Barbara Lee or a Katie Porter say, "Were you so unafraid or so afraid of me that you were that you would do this?" And his answer is going to be, you know, I had to play to win.
Yeah, all right, and certainly it looks like he did. We're gonna look at a few more election results here, Brian. If you can stand by for just one moment, I think we'll do some more election results. We'll put those up on the screen. We're going to come back with some more analysis. We're going to talk about some of the other races we are following here in California and in the Bay Area. We'll get you some more results, and we'll have more analysis here after this break. All right, you are watching the Fox Local election coverage tonight here on the Fox Local app. I'm Alex Savage, along with our political analyst, Brian Sobel, and of course you're getting all the results from many races all across the Bay Area and across the country here on the app tonight. But Brian, we want to get back into the conversation. We were talking about one of the big stories we're following tonight, and that is the race for U.S. Senate here in California. We are now reporting that the Democrat Adam Schiff will face off against Republican Steve Garvey coming up in the general in November. I do want to also ask you about what we're watching unfold across the country on this Super Tuesday, because you are seeing millions of people heading to the polls in 15 different states and one territory here. And by and large, we're seeing President Biden and former President Trump notching win after win after win, with one exception, a notable exception up in the Northeast. The state of Vermont, Nikki Haley, Mr. Trump's challenger, has actually come out on top in the Republican primary in the state of Vermont. A lot of people pointing to this, a very surprising win. What should we take away from this? Does this mean anything for her campaign moving forward?
Alex, no. Nice win for her. Vermont is an interesting state. It's a progressive state. It is a state that probably would not favor a Donald Trump in terms of his politics, would more favor somebody like a Nikki Haley. So this result here doesn't surprise me. The D.C. District of Columbia win by Haley also didn't surprise me. What has surprised me is that a number of states across the nation, including in California, Nikki Haley has done very poorly. Donald Trump has just steamrolled her in state after state. And I think what that portends for Nikki Haley is the end of the line. I don't know how she...
You don't see a path for her?
No, because tonight Donald Trump will pick up a huge amount of delegates.
Right.
And we still have several races to go, even in March. And I think he's gonna have enough to go into the convention on the first ballot and be in good shape on that.
All right. Speaking of former President Trump, you know, after some of his previous primary victories, he would come out and speak publicly, and in many cases, he sort of aimed his fire directly at Nikki Haley, his challenger. It was different tonight. A lot of people sort of took note of the speech that he gave after a lot of these Super Tuesday victories. We have a portion of Trump's speech. Let's listen to that.
There's never been anything so conclusive. This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history. It's been sad in so many ways, but I think it's going to be inspiring because we're going to do something that, frankly, nobody's been able to do for a long time. November 5th is going to go down as the single most important day in the history of our country.
All right, so you see right there, former President Trump, he's not worried about Nikki Haley, didn't mention her name at all in that victory speech tonight. He appears to be laser focused on the election in November, the general election. What kind of pivot are we going to see here after Super Tuesday from him? Well,
first, here's the reality. When Nikki Haley says, no mas, I'm done.
Yeah.
The first call that's going to come in is from the Trump campaign, and quite likely from former President Trump, to reach out to Nikki Haley and say, hey, together we can change this country. And if we can work together, and if I can find a place for you, I will. That's gonna be job one.
What does she say to that, though?
She well.
That's my question.
Well, she may say, I'm not interested in that. But no campaign winning by this margin doesn't reach out to the loser and say, hey, we really think you did well, and you know, how can we include you? Because she does have a national constituency.
Right.
And that constituency, if it cannot be folded into the Trump camp, can go into the Biden camp or into some other camp. And
so you don't want to let those voters go?
You do not want to let them go. So they're going to reach out to Nikki Haley.
Okay, let me ask you, just because we are seeing, obviously, President Biden doing very well in state after state, with a couple of exceptions, because we are seeing some of the states where voters can notch an uncommitted vote. There's a fair number of voters who are doing that.
Yeah.
We saw, obviously, those protest votes that took place in Michigan during the primary there. Pro-Palestinian voters voicing their displeasure and anger over the president's policies when it comes to the war that's unfolding in Gaza. How much do you think the Biden campaign has to be concerned about that?
Well, as Trump has to be concerned about Nikki Haley's constituency, this uncommitted, or these folks on the Democrat side of the aisle that do not think Joe Biden is the one they want to support, that becomes problematic, because it's a mathematical game about how many people can we keep, how many can we lose.
You can only lose so many voters.
You can only lose so many voters. And if you look at a state like Massachusetts, which is a blue, very progressive state, at one point that uncommitted number was over 16%. Yeah. So that's
insignificant.
Not insignificant, very significant.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see how
yes.
the results continue to come in the presidential primaries here. We want to shift back, though, and I believe we have some more results from here in California. And I think we have another one of the big races we're following, the only statewide ballot proposition. If we can put up the results we have for Proposition 1, and this is to obviously improve behavioral health services and get better mental health services and more beds for unhoused people here in California. It's a $6.4 billion proposition here to improve those services and hopefully address the homelessness crisis here. This would seem on the surface that a lot of voters in California would say, look, I'm all in to try to address this crisis in whatever way we can. But you can see this is far from being settled here. You have the 50.9% support for Proposition 1 and 49%, just over 49% of voters are rejecting this proposition. What do you think is playing out here? Because you look at a measure like this and you think, okay, more money to address homelessness. Why is it barely ahead right now?
Because I think California voters don't know that money is going to solve this problem. There's been all kinds of money thrown at homelessness, at crime in the inner cities, in particular bigger cities in California, and nothing has seemed to change. And I think California voters have been asked over and over again to pony up. Yeah. And as you point out, this is a $6 billion bond issue, and with interest, it'll be over $10 billion. And people in California are smart about that. They understand this is a big ticket item, and unless they believe that this is going to actually make a real difference, I think they're saying no. But 24% of the vote in, so so we'll see where it goes.
But every time we've checked in on those results, it has been extremely tight.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's important to point out that it only needs to get a majority support from voters in order for this proposition to pass.
Well, and one other thing to think about. Governor Gavin Newsom has been out pounding the pavement to support this.
He's a big backer.
And you know, he's got some numbers issues as well. I mean, not everybody is thrilled with the deficit in Sacramento and California. Sure. You put that next to this $6 billion deal, all this stuff starts adding up, Alex, to where a voter says, I just can't put anything more at this. I want to see California fix some things before I will fund it further.
Yeah. Let me get your quick thoughts, and maybe we can put the results back up on the screen. But the race in the South Bay in Silicon Valley is kind of shaping up to be an interesting one.
Yes.
The race to replace Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who decided to retire recently. And in that race, I believe this is another race here. This is a state senate race, District 7, and this is a race happening in the East Bay. And we'll just let you know about these results here. The mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Edegin, with 33% support. So doing well so far here, with just about a quarter of the ballots counted so far. But I was going to get your thoughts here on that race to replace Anna Eshoo in the South Bay, and it seems like you have some big names locked in a really tight contest. How does that shape out, do you think, heading toward November? Well,
you have the former mayor of San Jose, Sam Liccardo, in there. He's currently leading. Joe Simidian, who's a county supervisor, also held an assembly seat, a Senate seat in the California legislature. Evan Lowe, you've got a lot of names in this, but the thing to remember is there was a lot of money spent here too. Yeah. This was a very expensive campaign, loved by all of the television stations and everybody who enjoyed the nonstop advertisements being, a lot of ads put in by these people. So at this hour, looking at these results, if it holds, and there's about half, 44% in, you're going to have a knockdown, expensive race heading for November.
Yeah, no doubt about it. An expensive race in Silicon Valley.
There's a shocker.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get you a couple of other results, election results that we're following tonight. A couple of other measures that voters are deciding in the city of San Francisco. I believe we have those results here to put up on the screen. There's a number of measures that people in San Francisco are deciding on. If we have them, let me know. There you go. San Francisco voters deciding on Measure A. This is an affordable housing bond measure, and this would issue $300 million in bonds to fund affordable housing construction. And you can see right now, voters clearly signaling their support for Measure A, at least so far. And we'll also go to Measure B here and show you what the results are. This is Measure B here, police officer staffing and tax funding. This would set minimum standards for police staffing and set up a fund for officer recruitment. And you can see here that San Francisco voters rejecting this measure here. 66% of voters saying no to that measure in the city. Measure C. And you can see here, Measure C is ahead slightly here, has 55% support. This measure would give a one-time exemption on ownership transfer taxes for buildings converted from commercial to residential use. So obviously trying to create more housing in the city of San Francisco with that measure. And you can see the measure leading with 55% support. Measure D. Let's put that on the screen here and show you. This would implement some changes to ethics laws in the city. It would expand the list of gifts that city employees cannot receive. And you can see that voters overwhelmingly support that notion here. 89% of voters supporting Measure D tonight. Measure E, one of the most closely watched of the citywide measures in San Francisco. This would expand the powers of the San Francisco Police Department and reduce the powers of the Citizen Police Oversight Commission here. And Measure E has overwhelming support. 63% of voters voting in favor of Measure E tonight. And we also have Measure F here that we're going to let you know about. This would require adults without dependence on welfare to be screened for illegal drug use. This is one of the measures being supported by Mayor London Breed, and so is Measure E. And you can see here, Measure F with 65% support among voters in San Francisco. And finally, one last measure here in the city of San Francisco to let you know about. This is Measure G. This would urge San Francisco Unified School District to offer algebra to 8th grade students. Once again, it's not binding here, but it would just encourage the district to offer algebra in 8th grade, and it has 85% support from voters. All right, we are going to continue following election results. We will come back to you here on the Fox Local app when it warrants. And for now, we'll get you back to some more election results. And, of course, full coverage tonight on the 10 o'clock news on KTVU. right, welcome back in here to our election night coverage. I'm Alex Savage, our political analyst Brian Sobel standing by here throughout the night as the primary results come in here in California. And I think one of the big headlines here is the U.S. Senate race, and we already have two declared winners in that race. The Democrat Adam Schiff will face off against Republican Steve Garvey coming up in the general election in November. And we have not heard yet from Adam Schiff, but Republican Steve Garvey, we understand, is taking to the stage at his campaign event and is set to address his supporters here. And here is that live picture. We're going to listen in here to Steve Garvey after a win in tonight's primary election.
Exercise the most powerful of our many freedoms, and that's the right to vote. And I've always said this, it's the single greatest currency we have. You can't trade it, you can't give it away. It's inherently yours, it's your personal choice. And I thank you for tonight and the future. Your vote was your shared belief would be that California is no longer the heartbeat of America. Sadly, it's just a murmur. That we have challenges to face up to, like closing the border, and responsibilities to live up to, like helping the homeless off the streets and a pathway back to their dignity. And then if we do those things and more, our best days will be ahead of us, with California once again being that vibrant heartbeat of America. As we celebrate tonight, I want you to know that we haven't come this far to only go this far. When I stepped on the field for the Dodgers and the Padres, I didn't play for Democrats or Republicans or independents. I played for all the fans. And tonight, I'm running for all the people. Let me ask you, if you believe that our wide open border has been a humanitarian and national security catastrophe, then join our campaign. If you're struggling to pay bills at your kitchen table and only buying $10 of gas instead of 10 gallons, then come join us. If you're embarrassed by the state and federal government's failure to address the heartbreaking and endless plight of the homeless, come join our campaign. If you're frightened by the brazen crime that runs rampant in our cities because of those who have turned their back on our police, then join our campaign. If you're tired of career politicians that worry more about their next job in Washington than your next job here in California, you join our campaign. And if you're concerned that our foreign policy shows weakness and not strength to our adversaries and allies, then please join our campaign. Unlike others, that many of you, they want a job. Well, I want this U.S. Senator job. And I want to do the job for you because you deserve it, because you're great Californians. Here you have it. You know, when career politicians say they need seniority in the Senate to solve problems, they're only thinking about themselves. And when the pundits say a candidate needs long lists of far-fetched policies to talk about, they're only thinking about special interests. Well, when I say I will bring common sense and compassion to Washington, I'm only thinking about you, the people. We, the people, will tell Washington what we want, and you'll use my voice. When I get to the Senate, I'll always put you people before party politics. And I'll go to D.C.
All right, you are watching Republican Steve Garvey, the former Dodgers great, after a victory in tonight's primary election for U.S. Senate here in California. Garvey and the Democrat Adam Schiff, the congressman from Southern California, will face off in the November general election. We heard some comments there from Garvey tonight saying that he is running for all the people, is what he said. And he also made the comment that he hasn't come this far just to come this far. So he is obviously now going to have to shift into general election mode here and and try to figure out how you sort of overcome the numbers here in California where Democrats outnumber Republicans by a 2-to-1 margin.
Yeah,
how does he do that?
I was going to say he's got a job.
What's the simple strategy for him to do?
Well, first he's got to get to 58 counties, and he's really going to have to work. He's been selective in the primary. Now you take an Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was in a lot of counties. He worked really, really hard. But Steve Garvey's going to have to pick up the pace. I think he's going to have to better articulate what he's bringing to the program, and it's not just open borders. It's a whole litany of things in California that need to be dealt with, and what's his plan?
Right.
And
up until this point, he has faced a lot of criticism for not putting out detailed policy positions. He faced criticism for some, sort of evasive type answers during some of those debates there. But now you have to put out to the people where you stand and what you want to do.
Exactly. He's totally exposed now. He has to come up with a whole campaign strategy that involves talking to people about issues that are affecting them. So we're talking the economy in California. We're talking about crime. We're talking about homelessness. We haven't heard a lot of specificity out of him on any of those subjects, and now it's prime time.
All right, we're going to see how this plays out here as we head toward the general election here. But we know that this was a hard-fought race here. 2 other Democrats came up just short. Of course, that would be East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who did not make the cut here for the general election, and Southern California Democrat Katie Porter. And we know that Porter is speaking to some of her supporters tonight at a campaign event. And just before we took this shot here, she was hugging many of her supporters here after coming up short in tonight's election. We'll listen in to Katie Porter.
Like they are. You want elected officials who will deliver truth to power and exact real accountability from multinational corporations and government bureaucrats. You want leaders who demand better from both parties. Leaders who want progress, not partisanship. Officials whose bottom line is people, not profits. That is why we were able to turn heads in this campaign and make the people in power listen and run scared. Let's be honest. I think all of us can agree that our government isn't working well for us, for families, for Californians, for workers, for consumers. So many of those in power are too interested in helping other powerful people instead of paying attention to the needs of everyday people. Too many are more interested in being an elected official than in actually doing anything to fix the problems that everyday people face. That's why special interests and billionaires spent close to $20 million attempting to keep me out of the Senate. Special interests and the ultra-wealthy, they like politics as it is today because they control the politicians. And like we've seen in this campaign, they spend millions to defeat someone who will dilute their influence and disrupt the status quo.
You scared them, Katie.
I think we scared them. I have met so many people over the course of this race who tell me that they feel like their voices aren't being heard by those who have power. Californians who are working hard, who are playing by the rules, but they are not getting by. They are worried about the future. People who have to choose between childcare and utility bills. People who feel unseen and unserved by their own government, by our own democracy. We need leaders at every level of government who understand these frustrations and who want to fix it. California, you deserve a choice. You deserve to have a choice between the way things are now and the way things could be. You deserve a government that actually responds to your needs with fresh ideas, with bold vision, with moral courage. You and your kids deserve to actually afford to live and work in California in this generation and beyond. You deserve the peace of mind knowing that your elected officials cannot be bought. And take my word for it, I will always, always be fighting for you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.
You are watching live here a campaign event for Democrat Katie Porter here. She addressed her supporters tonight after coming up short in tonight's primary election here. She was not able to overcome the wins here by Democrat Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey, who came out on top in tonight's primary, and they will move on to the general election. But Katie Porter ran a tough campaign here. She talked here in her speech tonight, saying that it was the special interests that spent a whole ton of money to lift up Adam Schiff and to keep her out of the general election here. And she, someone even yelled from the crowd at one point. You probably heard them. They said they said to Katie Porter, they said, "You scared them." And we've talked a lot about this strategy where the Democrat Adam Schiff, he elevated Republican Steve Garvey, including him in more than half of the ads that he ran statewide here. And then Steve Garvey, winds up being the person he faces off with in November. A lot of people sort of, including Katie Porter, had viewed this as sort of a cynical ploy, so he'd have an easier path in the general. Is that a legitimate gripe from Katie Porter?
No question.
Yeah.
I think she and Barbara Lee have every right to say, why didn't you just play this straight, give us a shot at debate, and not elevate the Republican who is going to be, one would suspect, easy pickings as we move towards November. And instead, you could have debated us on the key issues. Now, Porter, when she was talking just now about the money being thrown into the race, did not single out Adam Schiff.
No, she didn't, but in a roundabout way.
Absolutely.
Maybe I was reading between the lines.
No, you were. You were right. You were right between the lines, because I think that's for tonight, and I think over the next few days you will see some commentary coming out of those campaigns that will be less than complimentary around what Adam Schiff did.
Yeah, all right. And also, so Katie Porter has lost in tonight's primary election. And also, we can say that East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee also came up short as well here. And I saw an interesting stat that just that came across here. This will be, it will be the first time in 30 years that California will not have a woman representing the state in the U.S. Senate. Of course, all of these candidates vying to replace the late Senator Dianne Feinstein here. What do you think that shows here? The fact that the two women here who were the front runners in this race couldn't make it to the general election.
Well, you have to give credit to Adam Schiff. He ran a very smart race. And, I think the thing that mitigated against Barbara Lee, quite frankly, is her age. She's 76, and I think a lot of people said, hey, I think we have enough elderly people in the House and the Senate, and this is for a 6-year term. So, are we just replicating the Dianne Feinstein model?
Yeah.
And
the age issue is front and center because of
Joe Biden
race.
and all of that. The Porter component. Katie Porter had her detractors too, but she ran a good race. But with respect to no women now in the representing California in the United States Senate, it's also true that Alex Padilla is a Latino who is representing a huge population in California.
Sure.
And so that's important. And one assumes at this hour that Adam Schiff ends up winning this, so it'll be Padilla and Schiff. And there was a day where we had Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer representing California, but times change.
Let me ask you one final question here on the Senate race. Obviously, it's one of the more intriguing races here. But as we shift toward a general election, what does Adam Schiff? And we're still, by the way, we're still waiting to hear from Adam Schiff tonight. We do expect that he's going to address his supporters here after his victory in the primary tonight. And of course, we'll try to bring that to you whenever we do get it. But how does he sort of shift his strategy to the general election? And how does he try to win over some of those dissatisfied voters who had been supporting Katie Porter or Barbara Lee.
Right, that's the second part of the campaign
Yeah.
season. And he's going to go out and he's going to say, hey, we are Democrats first. And we can't allow a Republican who voted for Trump twice and these other things that he's charged him with, we can't have that person. And I think it's going to be a very easy sell because I don't see Democrats saying, wow, geez, this Steve Garvey, I got to give him a second look. Adam Schiff is going to benefit from the Porter and Barbara Lee voters shifting over. I think he does very well.
No issues whatsoever.
No,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to take a few days. And that's it.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, election losses, they sting.
They sting, and there's going to be some discussion and some recrimination, but it all passes.
Yeah, all right. Appreciate the analysis tonight.
Yes.
Our political analyst, Brian Sobel, here with us on this Super Tuesday. We've been talking a lot about probably one of the headlines here in the California primary, and that is the fact that Democrat Adam Schiff will be facing off against Republican Steve Garvey coming up in November here. We appreciate you checking in with us tonight here on the Fox Local app. We're going to get you back to some more local election results from across the Bay Area, across the state, and across the country. And, of course, we'll have full coverage coming up tonight on the 10 o'clock news. We'll see you then.